Welcome to Between Two Clinicians, the podcast that gives you a backstage pass to the mind of two therapists. I'm Talia.
And I'm Adam.
Let's get into it.
Yep. All right, well, welcome to Between Two Clinicians. My name is Adam Luke. As always, I'm joined by the amazing Talia. There we go.
I like it. I'm like a magician's assistant.
No. This is 50%. Okay. Either way. Sometimes there's an ebb and flow.
We'll get in the cardboard box and cut each other. Yeah, it'll be perfect.
Yeah. No, mutual destruction. There we go.
Like a two-sided saw, like a lumberjack.
You always have to get that lumberjack reference in with me, man. I am powered by flannel and coffee. That's pretty much it, right? Like, I actually, like, this Christmas, I realized, like, oh no, like, it is a lifestyle, because all my gifts I got from other people were flannel shirts. Like, no one, like, they're past giving socks. I guess they just don't think I wear them anymore. So it's all flannel shirts, and I was completely okay with that.
Good. Yeah, I mean, it's on brand. You may as well. It's like a uniform. So good.
Yeah, it is on brand and on topic. Well, goodness gracious, it has been a while since we've sat down, because
I've everything though.
Oh no, like, literally, and I think that's hysterical for everyone that's listening in.
Yeah.
Like, no, we have, like, had it scheduled, confirmed night before, confirmed an hour away, and then life has just been like, no. I mean, this is the best thing. Like, really, it's a greatest example of spiritual warfare that I really know. It's like, because literally things would change in 45 minutes. Like, oh, what? I'm going to the hospital. Oh, cool. I have no power and it's negative 3 degrees. Oh, wow. Like, I mean, I was in a Donner Party situation. Yeah. Like, I was in a straight up, like, looking at the dog, like, ugh. Like, thank God it's a Labrador. Yeah. So we're good for 7 days.
It's been a journey to get here. I'm excited to be back with you. It's been way too long.
Absolutely. I mean, and I feel like it was funny because we came up with this thought process of, okay, let's do a podcast on, like, finding power when you feel powerless. And in most of the times we've needed to reschedule, we've been completely powerless.
Yeah, you literally. Yeah.
Exactly.
You literally did not have power, and I was in the ER. So
yeah. And it's almost like we meet on these days to just, like, confirm who has the worst day. Like,
oh, that's nice. I had this. Damn it, they won again. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh, dang it. All right. Death by freezing. Guess it wins.
I'm doing this solo. It's fine.
This is between me and that empty chair. Welcome to your Gestalt podcast. I will be myself, and that will be my shadow self. And
I was thinking, I thought that too. Yeah. Yes, that's what I will have snapped. So there it is.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, we have power, literally and figuratively, and I cannot wait to dive into this topic.
Yes. Well, I mean, it was one of those, it came out of the theme of the work I was sort of doing in the middle of December with a lot of my clients, was feeling as the year was coming to a close, was almost like, I'm feeling like I've lost power or lost influence over my life. And I think there is, like, a fatalism of when it ends. Like, okay, this year's over. Did I achieve the things I wanted to achieve? And then there's almost like this period of time where you're like, well, I'm just going to lay down and die for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'm just going to hibernate. I understand bears more than ever. And it's a long winter. Nobody needs me. So we're done. Yep, I was about ready to just quit and retire. It was too long. Last year felt like 4 years in one.
4 years in one. I would actually agree with you on that. Like, it's been interesting to notice, like, as we've come out of a pandemic, like, getting back into the flow of things has felt so, like, clanky. Like,
yes,
I wouldn't have imagined that, right? Like, but it just, I feel like we still have PTSD from it. And I really mean that, because, like, so my wife is pregnant. So we have a lot of, like, doctor's visits that we're taking care of. And it's interesting because where we live in Tennessee is very rural. And so you don't see that many masks. But then when you go into Nashville, you see a ton of masks. And then like there's that part of you that's like the Boy Scout side of like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? And it's interesting to watch like how my own anxiety changes, right? Like, and so I was realizing with a lot of my clients that that anxiety was still carrying through with sort of the back-to-back holidays, because we went from 2.5 years of like people really not meeting as families to now all
Yeah.
of a sudden we are meeting as families, and we're also bringing like our very concentrated snow globe selves to the family dinner.
And we've grown, I think humans have grown, so they've been forced to grow and have grown so much in the last few years that you don't really see, you often don't see how much until you're around other people who have grown in hopefully the same direction or have grown in an
Mm,
entirely different direction. You're like, you did not used to be like this when we saw you last time. And I had a lot of people that I saw who didn't want to go back to seeing their families. They were like, this is the best gift I ever could have asked for. I don't have to see these in-laws or these whatever family members I have that I don't like. I don't have to be around them.
yeah.
And now this is the year where I have to, and I don't want to set the boundaries. I'm exhausted. Like I felt
Mm,
like some people were upset, and understandably so, sad that they didn't get to see it if they liked it. However, if you did not
mm,
like this part of the year already, and I love the meme that's like Christmas and Thanksgiving should be 6 months apart. It's absurd to be seeing those people so soon after one time.
yes.
Like if you don't like this time of year or that time of year in the family
Mm,
that you're seeing, then it would be a welcome break. And it does feel really, you can feel very powerless when you are forced to go to do all these things. I know this year was probably the most, it felt like the movie Four Christmases, including an almost split. And I was just like, I'm going to snap. I'm going to snap. Like, this is where I come unhinged. It's the 12 days of Christmas in reverse, all in one day. I'm out. Like, I'm not doing this anymore.
yeah,
Yeah.
about
And
that,
one
right?
psychotherapist. Yeah, no, it was not, it was too many people, too much on my nervous system.
Hmm.
It didn't matter how many boundaries and how many skills I had. I needed like a full week off from any human contact besides clients. I only saw clients for one day in between those weeks. So yeah, feeling very powerless. And then what ended up helping me feel more empowered was understanding I didn't have to continue to engage in those traditions. And that's true of any
Mm,
part of the year, right? This is not just for
yeah.
holiday time, really focusing on what is not working for you anymore. What used to help you
Mm,
feel powerful might now make you feel powerless or might just land neutral. This just isn't for me anymore. It
yeah.
doesn't bring me joy. So I don't want to do it.
I think you brought up a really good point there when you talked about like the hesitation and like the existential dread of like maintaining boundaries, because we haven't really had to maintain boundaries. Like everyone needed to be quarantined in their own space, so we all created our own bubbles, and then like we've all been rumors to one another, right? Like we'll call and talk to someone and they'll talk about, oh, uncle this, aunt that, and that's fine, but I haven't had to deal with this person directly. And then there almost seems like, at least in the work I've done with other clients, it seems like all of a sudden we've become very hypercritical of one another.
Yeah.
Like I'll never forget a client said like she absolutely slaved over the meal on Thanksgiving, and the first comment was someone saying like, oh well, I would have done that with beef, it would have been so much better with beef.
We have beef right now.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, there's 2 servings of beef
Yeah.
right here.
And then just go back. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, no,
I grew up in a very, I think I've made this joke on another podcast before, but years ago, one of my clients was going through eHarmony and I said, okay, I'll go through it with you. Not like in session, but like I did the
mhm,
exams. She's like, it was this. I'm like, I want to see firsthand. I didn't need it. I had a partner, but I was going
yeah,
through and the eHarmony scored. It's like, have you considered that you grew up with hypercritical parents? And it shows the scale. And it's like
yeah,
most people's parents, your parents. And the scale was like
yeah,
0 to 100. And it was literally off the charts. Like I
yeah,
was, and like, no, I'm like, oh, that explains so
yeah.
much.
When you sit there and you're doing the house tree person
Yeah.
like thing, and then they're like,
Yes.
and then like you look at other people and you're like, wait a sec, like that's a nice house. Like, well, let me see yours. It's Mordor. Like,
Idyllic. What
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
childhood did you have? Yeah,
yeah.
it's
No,
you don't
re-
realize what's normal or abnormal until you get a break from it or until you get around it again, especially with critical family members. And that's really the first thing Out of your really?
Yep.
Great. You can cook it
Well,
yourself next time. So
and
very good.
so it's interesting because again, in the quarantining, I think there's also been the side of us where we've sort of developed our own voices and our own echo chambers.
Yeah.
And so because we ran our own independent households, then we're very opinionated when it comes to everyone else's household. So now what we're doing is none of us is actually talking with each other.
Yeah.
We're talking at each other, and we're also in this like it's basically this contest for first place that no one wants, right? Like it's I always refer back to it almost like the pain Olympics, right? Like I
Mm.
want to get gold place for basically doing the
Yeah.
worst or surviving the worst. Like who really wants that medal on their, on their mantle? And so how do you pull power out of this situation? I think it has been trying to reestablish boundaries in different ways, but man, has there been significant kickback in that. Like I was actually the most proud of several clients that like at certain parts in their holiday days, they were just like, you know what? This is no longer mutually beneficial. I'm going to go ahead and get up and leave. And there's all this like other obligation, right? Like, oh, we haven't gotten to presents or we didn't break out the pie or blah, blah, blah. And being able to actually start saying like, if I'm feeling powerless in this situation, why would I ever ask someone else to continue this
Yeah.
or even tell myself I have to survive it?
Yeah. Absolutely. And when we have a family to tend to, it's extra pressure of what example are we setting for our kids?
Mm,
What am I showing them is normal or abnormal, depending
yeah.
on how I interact with other family members. And
Mm,
I think that comes to a head as well during any family gathering, but also in the planning of a family gathering.
yeah.
And I've seen uh, in a positive direction, I have seen a huge shift on social media where people are using more assertive communication and modeling
Mm-hmm.
interpersonal effectiveness. Please don't comment on my daughter's body. Please don't comment on my son's weight. Like people are being more vocal about that now and trying to empower this next generation.
Mm,
Yet the generation, so it's like this generation, our generation, the kids' generation, but then this generation is like, what are you doing? No, it's like you have to choose between empowering one and disempowering the other, or the other one feeling disrespected of like, well, back in my day. And it's like, okay, what's going to happen? What's the next thing that's going to come out of your mouth with back in my day? What happened? You shamed the
mm-hmm.
person. You didn't have all this stuff. You were hypercritical, whatever. I don't want to live like that anymore. I'm in therapy to deal with that. I'm
Oh,
not going to
yeah.
put my kid through therapy to deal with that. I'm trying to prevent it. And so there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
power management, I think, as well between
Mm.
generations.
That's a great way of framing it, power management, because if you do look at it, like when we talk about like we go back to the greatest generation, right? And
Yeah.
so you go to the greatest generation, then you have the boomers, then you have X, and you have
Yep.
millennials, then you have Z's. You start going through this thing and you recognize that like there is this really interesting socially accepted practice of like one generation shitting on the other, right? Like, and then the idea that once I reach a certain age, I'm able to say anything, no matter how cruel or cold it is, because I've earned the right to abuse the others. And like,
Mm,
if we really sit there and think about that, that's like 100% a trauma response.
it is.
Like, I was sitting down with a client that was basically recalling a situation they had over the holiday of basically having a grandparent sort of like steal a moment that was very much like something that was an established tradition for that small family and was just like, well, I can do whatever I want because I'm this grandparent. And it's like, oh, really?
We
Like,
that age. Okay.
yeah, so I've reached that age that now it's no longer thriving with me, it's surviving me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
might as well just call our grandma cancer at this point. Like, it this is the side that we have to be pretty aware of, like, what am I going to subject my kids to?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is going to set the precedent and the traditions and the experiences for a lot of people. And when you talk to people that say like, oh, I hate going home, a lot of that is reinforced not in what they've experienced as adults, but what they experienced as children.
And
Like,
continue to experience, as I said this, I forget where it was the other day, but it was no matter how old you get, like your parents will always be your parents. You'll always be the child to your parents. You will become an adult, obviously, and it's your responsibility in adulthood to heal and change.
Yeah.
And if you would like that dynamic doesn't leave your cells, though. There will continue like one of my favorite books talks about the hierarchies in family systems or in systems in general, and there's vertical relationships and horizontal relationships, and when you're younger, it's parent-child. It's a vertical relationship. It's teacher-student. It's boss employee. Like, we have these vertical relationships, and there's certain deference given to the top vertice. And then when you get older, right, and then it's adult, still parent and child, but adult, now it's a horizontal relationship. How do you navigate that now that it's eye to eye? But some people still don't see eye to eye. They will continue or perpetually see it as this. And if you're not watching the video of this, go hop on YouTube and see what I'm talking about, because I talk with my hands because I'm Italian. Talk about growing up in conflict. Oh, there it is, right there. Chef.
This is a dictatorship.
Power? No. You want to work on having it be an equitable horizontal relationship, and that starts with laying the foundation in childhood that children are not, though they are littler than you, they're not less than you. No, they're not a person. You're raising an adult. It's adult in training. So you don't need to baby them and coddle them, but you also don't need to be like super adult and let the world shit on them too early, right? You're still protecting them and buffering a bit, but you also need to be realistic. And I think that's the balance of how do we empower without disempowering the other? How can I stay in my power and encourage the other person I'm interacting with to be in their power, and not use shame and not use the trauma response of, well, back in my day, we had it worse, the downward social comparisons, which happen so frequently. I've heard it detailed in session. I've seen it in my own personal life. Well, I had it this, and like we joked about, it's like this contest of like who had it worse. That's not going to help, in my opinion, anybody have it better, because I've been through.
Well, neither of us get closure, right? Like, by us saying like, exactly, I was the one kicked the hardest in life. Like, congrats. Perfect. So how did you actually overcome that?
Yeah. I did. I just shove it far down and have a drinking problem. Oh, okay.
I have a drinking problem as I like stuff my face with Chipotle. Anyways, like there's
it's just this is
yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully, like now that I know that we're on YouTube, I'll definitely dress different. But
this is all whiskey. I'm just kidding.
You know, this is tea. Anyways, so so here's something that I want to also piggyback on your observation, which I think is spot on, but something that I've tried to like wake up in my own clients is realizing that, like, so you were talking about a healthy relationship is when you're an adult, your parents are adult, and you're seeing each other at the same level. Really, it's almost like it's a relationship that's built off of like companionship and like, you know, walking through a journey together. There's a lot of beauty in that. But in reality, is most of the time when we go home, the way that I have verbalized it is a lot of people go, why do I act so irrational? Why am I so emotional? Why do I feel so much like a child? And your inner child comes out when you go home. When you go home, I don't care what car you drive. I don't care what clothes you put on. Once that door opens and you walk into mom and dad's house,
welcome back to childhood.
Yeah, you might as well be a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, wherever the trauma is in your life. That's the kid that's hanging up the clothes and walking into that house. And that's why it feels like, wow, why do I feel like I'm fighting? Why do I feel like I'm acting like a child? Because you are absolutely raw nerve of your inner child. That's why it's important to have inner child work. Like, even I like to talk about basically having cognitive interweaves of like being able to say, like, you've got to raise up that inner child. That inner child's probably going to need to get to a point where it no longer needs the affection of its mother, because actually the primary voice in that inner child's life is now its own voice. What do we want to accomplish? Where do we want to go? Because mom has had so many years to fill that need for us, and somehow she didn't do that. It's not about vilifying mom. It's simply saying it's no longer probably appropriate or smart for me to continue to pine away at having my needs by a person who has historically been unable to meet those needs.
Yes. And the holding on to that hope that one day they will, when they, let's generously say, never have, or have proven it's quite infrequent or very inconsistent, that holding out that hope is a more childlike state. It is before your parents. I have a few things to say. I'm gonna organize my notes. When you're growing up, most children view their parents as like omniscient, omnipotent. They're like a superhero, and they don't have their own needs. Your only view of them is, this person is my parent. They serve a function, which makes sense because that is the way that human beings are raised. We can't even hold our neck up without assistance. We need other human beings to literally survive. Like, we've all heard of the cloth monkey and the wire monkey experiment. The children, or the baby monkeys who only got the wire monkey, even though they were being fed, died. You need that care and closeness. And so when you're growing up, I call it seeing parents as people. Some people don't reach that age till 30, 35, 40, where there's maybe some cognitive decline. There's a health concern. They go to their parent for help with something, and their parent can't be there for them or doesn't know the answer. And you're kind of like, but you know, what? And some people have parents as people occur at like 5 years old, 12 years old. So I almost, when I sit with adults in my couple sessions, it's far more important to me what age they each realize the parents as people, more so than their chronological age. That's one factor. Like, of the 3 to 4 factors I view other than chronological age for maturity, that is one of the key factors. Because if you have had to survive in the world and live your life and empower yourself without the adults who are arguably supposed to be the ones who are setting that template, and you're 35 years old, but you've really been in adulthood since 5, you have a 30-year jump on your partner who may have just moved out 5 years ago at 35. You're not chronologically similar, but it's like some Benjamin Button shit is happening underneath, because you have lived a life that they have not had.
You've been parentified the entire time. You have not been allowed.
Frustration for learned helplessness, that your partner doesn't know how to do these things, when secretly a lot of the couples I work with, it's usually the women, they're resentful that they've had to do all these things, and they had that fantasy idyllic version of, my partner's going to come in and rescue me from having to be the adult, but inadvertently they've partnered with somebody who supports them needing to be the adult. So it's, I want to disempower myself and not hold all this power. I want to give it to you. And the guy's like, no, I'm good. I'm actually chill. I don't want to do that. It's like, fuck, what have I done? Like, I just wanted a break. I don't want to do all the things anymore all the time. And this, it needs to be discussed. And to your point previously, so we can dive into these two, I call it seasonal age regression. I'm doing some work and research on it right now. You do link back to the last age that you were when you lived at home, at a minimum, all of the needs of your inner child as well, but the entire family system has a familial age regression back to the last time that nuclear family was living at home. So if you moved out at 18, they're going to treat you as you were when you were a teenager. If you moved out at 28, they're going to treat you there. If you're still living at home, if you've moved back home to have help raising your children, like, there's so much nuance to this. I'm so glad you brought that up. It is so normal. And so many people don't know about that, or we don't have that term. So I'm hoping that, like, seasonal age regression takes off, or familial age regression, where you go back to that in your home, your childhood home, and you're all adults, but internally, all of you are the last age you were when you lived there. And that is something that so many people struggle with. And this is where boundaries come in. How many hours can you be, or minutes, can you be in your childhood home and still feel like an adult?
Ooh. Well, and so, like, this is the other side of it. It's a seasonal age regression also prompts for me the fact that there's no set in stone ideal that, like, immediately open that door and now we have regression on both sides. It can also be regression from someone who has not processed these emotions. And
it can be unilateral. Yeah,
absolutely. And so, because I think that that's the other case of, sometimes when I sit down with clients, like, again, I hope people aren't hearing them like, oh, so Adam just bashes older people. No. But what I want to bring up is the fact that, like, I feel like I've sat down with other clients that they won't actually let their parents move past maybe the trauma that they have caused in the past. Because, like, if you moved out of your house at 18 and here you are at 24 or at 22 or hell 33, whatever it is, you coming back to that house for a holiday, your dad is not the same person. Now, it might be really easy to accept a narrative that says, oh no, dad's the same person, dad's
Yeah.
an asshole, dad never changed. Well, if I continue to treat dad that way and then psychodynamically keep putting that sort of vibe out there, I'm also pigeonholing dad's relationship with me from ever being anything different.
Yep.
So a lot of times when I'll sit down with clients, it can very easily come out that, like, wait a second, this isn't actually a family of origin issue. This may be like a projection of a scapegoat that never actually grew out of it. And so we have to be, again, you have to have the awareness of, like, wait a second, if every time I go to the holiday, I am the one that's a common denominator of blowing up the family moment or having the family fight or being the one that's like causing the disruption, there may actually be a need for me to process
No.
that there's actually maybe something that I'm not willing to accept. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't know how many times I've done it in session, as a male therapist, sometimes people seek out male therapy because they're looking to have like that father experience. And even though, like, you look at me and you're like, Adam, you're like a mid-30s lumberjack, how can you be my dad? I can't be your dad, but it may be very powerful for you to hear, like, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry someone treated you like that.
To be seen. Yeah.
To be seen from another man saying, like, yeah, that was not how you were supposed to be treated. But that awareness without action means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we actually have to then attempt the repair. That's probably the hardest thing that I've got going on with a lot of clients right now as we go from the end of the year into the new year. It's trying to move clients into awareness is great to a point, but awareness without action, again, is meaningless. So having known that, maybe it's also trying to sit there and be able to also, to your best of your ability, be that observer of, like, am I being attacked or am I willing to make myself the attacked in this situation? Like, mom putting butters on the potatoes is
Yeah.
probably not her saying she doesn't like my vegan lifestyle. Like
It's a
there's
personal affront and it will be treated as such.
exactly. And it's so funny to watch it happen when you're
Oh
sitting
yeah.
at the family table and you almost feel like, all right, the suit of armor comes on, they pull
Yep.
their sword, here we go. And it's like, wait a second, I think maybe there was a misunderstanding. Like, I
But
don't think
how
everyone's,
mature would we have to be to admit that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and you see this more often, especially when you have family with kids,
Mm,
because, like, if someone has a kid that's a tyrant,
yeah.
like, all of a sudden people say, so you don't like my child? No, no, no. I just personally didn't want him kicking me in the nuts. I don't know, crazy,
Weird.
but I still need him for at least another kid. So, like, there's a
Yeah.
reason why I might say something, but people get so, oh, you're projecting on me bad parenting. No, no, no.
I think
Like,
you're the one for directors, but
like,
okay.
I don't know. Yeah, absolutely. But this is, again, how do we move in kindness to pull power back in that situation? Because you can feel very powerless if someone all of a sudden comes in and assigns you the narrative of, like,
Yeah.
oh, you're being this person, you're being misogynistic towards me, you don't understand, you don't
Yeah.
have children,
Yeah.
like, all these things can be hurled at you, and you're like, well, no, wait a second,
Didn't
I
say any
don't
of
think
that.
that's not what I just thought maybe we wouldn't stab the sofa. Like, I don't know.
Crazy not. To your point, so many parents introject into their child the helplessness and powerlessness that they felt when they were that age. And
Mhm.
when you couple that with going back into the family system or the family of origin, you as the person are almost defending
Mhm.
your child who came from you and demonstrating to your family the way that you wish that they would have defended you when you were that age in your family growing up. So that's where
Yep.
I think a lot of the projective identification, projections, and
Mm.
defensiveness comes up. How dare you talk to them that way? And if you push a little bit further, like if you catch yourself doing this, imagine what it would be like if your family was very calm and very receptive, which I know is
Mm.
that's a huge ask, but imagine what it would be like if they kind of did that blank slate and were like, what's going on deeper here? Like, imagine if your
Mhm.
therapists were there to intervene in live time. Chances are you will get to, I never got to do that when I was their age. I tried to and I got shut down. You will hear deep down. It's very similar to why parents are triggered by
Yep.
disrespect, which rarely rarely as a child, unless they have more of those sociopathic CD, ODD tendencies,
Yeah.
rarely are they intentionally trying to disrespect you. You are choosing to feel disrespected by a comment. And if it's name calling or something like that, where
Yeah.
we can argue it is disrespect, the loving way to set the boundary is, so curious why you use that word. No response. I'm not going to give into that. Oh, I heard so and so use it. I thought it would be funny. This makes sense. In this household, we actually don't use that word. We use this instead. If you want to say it in the privacy of your own bedroom, be my guest. You cannot say that to another person, though, and still have the relationship feel respectful afterwards. So there's intervention that you can do. So when you're going in and trying to, it's a positive thing to empower your child. If dig a little bit deeper, though, sometimes why you harp on or really so adamant about everybody else respecting this rule or respecting this, it does often stem from a place of, this was never done for me, and I will be damned if it's not done for my child. So I'm on both camps. Like, own your projections and also understand that not everybody is going to want to defend you the way you want to be defended.
Absolutely. And you can step into that empowerment of being able to be respected without also being the person that causes additional pain. Like, it's like the Harvey Dent moment, right? Like, you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And I think that so many of us at times, because parenting is a very difficult task, you know, again, sitting down with family where we've got multiple unique individuals sitting around one space, but I'm really big on how you're experienced. Are you being experienced how you want to be experienced? Because I do believe that when we sit down and we really pay attention to things, we can find ourselves being experienced as we don't want to. I don't think, you know, racist Grandpa Joe wants to be racist Grandpa Joe. I think, like, there are a lot of people filled with hurt that are experienced in ways they don't want to be experienced, but they've gotten so used to using maladaptive skills that that's what they do. Like, you know what? It actually makes sense for me to be the scapegoat, or for me to be the hero, or for me to be the F up. Like, whatever it is, that's a role that has become comfortable to wear, but something I've never actually wanted to play out, you know. And I know that we're going really fast in multiple directions here, but I think the way that we talk about this really highlights the messiness of how it plays out in real time. Because, I mean, we might as well have sat down at a table with the food in front of us, and this is how quick this stuff comes at you, and how fast because it's probably going to be unrealistic for you to go to your family Thanksgiving or Christmas or New Year's and think that you're going to be able to monopolize a table long enough that you can finally get that closure you have always wanted, and have that moment where everyone goes around in a circle and, you know, bestows on you their gratitude and thankfulness. That's probably not going to happen, but there are going to be small victories in this. Small victories, and it may be you actually speaking up for yourself and the conversation changing, with you being able to hold, like you said, your ground with, like, hey, we actually don't say that, or we don't do that with our children, and that being, oh, okay, boundary reinforcement, move on. But I think so many of us are, like, trying to have those, like, Oscar worthy moments where we get to hold the talking stick and feel so good about ourselves. And that's probably unrealistic. What's going to be realistic is us being experienced how we want to be experienced. And that's why I'm really big on trying not to be pushed into a direction of being experienced that I don't want to be experienced. Like, it's very easy for me to definitely be the individual that has, like, the cruel wit and just be abusive with language. I can sit and pretty much have a rap battle with whoever I want at a table and absolutely eviscerate you. That was someone that I utilized a lot when I was younger, because it was a defense mechanism, and I was scared and I was insecure. But me being able to recognize that someone else wants to push me to that spot, it is my responsibility to say, I'm not willing to play that game.
I'm glad you brought that up. I had to do that by myself on I think it was Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. It was all a very traumatic blur. No. It was fine. I remember we were playing cards, and my family and my partner,
Italian families and cards. Oh God, dominoes are the next thing.
but now this year it was a lot of like subversive communication and power differentials and trying to reclaim power by way of using the card game as like a conduit to get this power reclaimed. And I remember my my partner's family is very big on roasting as a way of loving one another, and I'm cool with it. I can usually take it, but I've had a rough year, rough holiday season. I've had personal. I just was not my most fortified self to be able to handle it well. And I felt like pigeonholed between snapping in front of my family I came from, in front of the family that came from me. So it's just like, how do I balance this and look respectful still and not have this be like an Italian fight?
How does this not break down to a double wide fist fight, right?
I remember telling him on the drive home, to your point, I felt so much like wanting to verbally rip you apart. And I was saying it just as calmly as this. And he's just kind of looking at me and I'm like, and I don't want to be that person, because if you push me into a corner, I will feel the need to attack. And I can promise you the same skills I use for good, I can use for evil. I don't think you want me pushing on all of your insecurities and flaws. I am a woman. I see them constantly and I ignore them because that's not what partners do. But if you want to play that game, here's your playing piece. You will lose. And I don't want to be that vicious, disrespectful, cutthroat female partner. I'm like, I retired her. I don't want to be that with you. So I need you in the future to be very mindful that when I say lovingly to stop or give you the look that we've agreed upon is the look, you can't do it anymore. Because I will snap and I don't look orange, and I really don't want to be on a lifelong Discovery Channel special about wives who snapped. So if we could just have this be what we use as the respect from here on out, I would really appreciate it. So being able to know, here's where I almost went, and I want you to know, if it happens again, I'm going to go there. I'm putting you on notice.
Exactly.
One warning.
Don't worry, I'll never let that happen. I'll make sure they sell to Netflix, right? Like I'm not letting you go on cable.
No, I am a Netflix.
Like that's a Netflix special. At least 8 episodes. Anyways, so
you
pulling back.
Control your triggers though. It's your responsibility when you get pushed to old you to not do it.
So did you just say that it is my responsibility not to explode?
I know it sucks to hear, but it's the truth.
I mean, I feel like sometimes I say that out loud as a therapist in a session or a relational coach, and I have people look at me and they're like that's bullshit. And it's like, well, no, let's actually talk about what true power is.
Well, no, I want to say the victim.
I want to say the victim, and I want to be powerless. Because in victimhood, I am powerless.
Yes. And in some ways, this inverse process happens where feeling powerless is a way of getting false power or only imaginative power, and it really diminishes how powerful the person can be, and they might not have skill in being powerful yet in the non-victimhood sense, so they just remain in that sense, or also the family system or the system they're around continues to pigeonhole them and sees them as that former version of themselves. So try as they might to empower themselves, they keep getting smushed and smushed and smushed. It can go both ways. It could be everybody else wants you to be empowered and you stay the victim, or it could be that you're trying to break out of that and everybody else continues to treat you that way. Very mindful which process is acting upon you.
Absolutely. Good stuff. I mean, and so like here we've dropped a lot of awareness on you, some actionable points as well to move into that direction. But I think that the thing to highlight right there at the end where Talia and I were talking is like, again, victimhood is not sainthood.
No.
And I think a lot of people see victimhood as a virtuous state of being, and really
there's no medal for it. Well, I sacrificed the most, I suffered the most trauma, I went through the most. Okay, and what are we going to do about it?
Now, what I'm going to say next, I know if you're driving, you're going to like, the steering wheel is going to shake a little bit, but like, so keep it straight in the lane here. But when you play the role of being the victim for a very long time, you end up also being sort of like an emotional toxic waste dump. And I want you to really hear what I'm saying. I'm not saying that when someone you know, involuntarily mistreated you in such a way, and that somehow that's bad. But what happens is we start to sort of become hoarders of toxic rituals and maladaptive coping skills and our way to somehow survive our victimhood. Now, what ends up happening is it's that Harvey Dent quote that then all of a sudden we wake up one day, and maybe the relationships that we did form out of love, we formed out of completely the most innocent and beautiful things we wanted to create. We end up then going back to the rituals that hurt us, and we start using them as the blueprint on how we navigate the relationships in front of us. So people truly, women who have been hurt by their parents, men who have been hurt by their parents, or through just interpersonal relationships as children, what do? We end up actually perpetuating that abuse on the people that we love the most. And then we get stuck again in that feeling of powerlessness. Like when you wake up and you look in the mirror and you see your dad, or you say something out loud and you realize I said the same thing that my offender said to me as a justification on why I could behave a way that isn't allowable for someone else.
Yeah. There's also, I want to make a very important caveat or highlight, I guess, whatever the word would be. When we're saying, I'm assuming when we're saying victim, it's not like a victim of a crime or or something that they did not choose. Like this is
correct.
Not fault victim is victimizing themselves. This is more systemic, relational, the scapegoat, the person who has either disempowered themselves. And sometimes the start of the disempowerment is having low self-esteem, low self-worth, struggling with self and identity. And then this interplays into the system that they're in. This is separate from somebody who is like a victim of a crime or
absolutely.
We're not talking about
no. That again, because that's where you get like deeper into the onion, right? There are individuals who have had very traumatic experiences happen to them and then have turned around and used those experiences for why they have a lack of ability to grow themselves. And that becomes its own set of maladaptive coping skills. But that's not what we're talking about here. What I'm talking about is embracing your embracing triangle. Yeah. It's basically embracing the powerlessness of like, oh, my family's never going to change. And as soon as you sort of throw up your hands and do that, then what you start doing is adapting or adopting the same behaviors that have been perpetuated on you against other people in your own spheres of influence. Yes. And being, I forget how long ago it was, I put this post discussing that people sometimes continue to victimize themselves and also become their own persecutor. So it's like, okay, nobody's taking, and if you aren't familiar with Cartman's drama triangle, Google it. I feel like I've been saying that a lot because people ask questions. I'm like, do you not know Google exists? Like, it's a free search engine that you can ask anything. Like, just as a caveat, a side note, if you choose to remain the victim and nobody else is persecuting the victimhood upon you, you will take it upon yourself to create it yourself. It's like, I'm just going to glob on all of these roles and then will somebody come in and rescue me? Waiting and waiting and waiting for somebody to come in and rescue you from something that when you are an adult and you have access to resources to help you step out of victimhood and you choose not to take them, that is on you for continuing to perpetuate your own victimhood. Absolutely. There are so many free resources. I'm not saying everything is as educational as I would like, and it does not replace the value of working individually with brain. I'm not saying that. There are so many books and other resources and YouTube video, like you can educate yourself so much now with the World Wide Web and social media from actual reliable pages. There is not an excuse to continue to remain in victimhood, especially if you have things to avail yourself of and you choose not to. That is on you. You have to have that ownership. And just to make it sure it's clear to everyone, because I'll never forget the first time someone talked about Cartman's triangle to me. So it was like, what season of South Park was that on? And it's not Cartman, it's Cartman's. Yes. K-A-R-P. Yes. Men. But I'll never forget, like I was like, South Park triangle. So like I was like lost, dude, because half my way through my master's program was just undoing my lifelong redneck like PhD. And I was like, oh, Carmen, I love his, like, yes, sail away, sail away.
Well, so no, but
Yeah,
also
I'm
here,
more of a Stanniest. Like,
so good. Carpman with a P. Very, very informative work. And the rescuer, often you'll see this triangulation occur in families, even if there's more than 3 family members. One person was in the victim role by choice or by force. One person was in the rescuer role, again, by choice, by force, and as a persecutor. Be mindful of this. And also looking at the family systems chart with substance use, even if you just Google something close to that, it will show up that there's like the scapegoat, the cheerleader, the enabler, the identified patient. These systems are at play in most every family to some degree. Whether or not you have substance use, there is dysfunction in every family. To what degree and what kind varies, obviously, but there is not one family I have met that has absolutely no dysfunction ever at all for even a minute, even if it's only an internal thought that you cope with. You're a human being. You have a flawed system. Everybody has a flawed system because we don't have perfect operating software up here all the time. That's why we need software updates, like talking to a therapist, learning from podcasts, reading a book. You're not born omniscient, knowing all that you need to know. You must educate yourself. And if you want to be different than where you are, it's your responsibility to change yourself, to empower yourself to be that, whatever different looks like for you.
God, that sounds like so much work.
That's the theme I've been exploring with my clients. They're like, does it ever get better? And I was like, define better. Like, don't do that shit with me.
I love you.
No, it doesn't. Yes, it does, obviously. But as you heal this stuff and you get further away, 2 things happen. You wouldn't be able to get to these steps 2 through 5 or however many you're on if you hadn't have taken those first steps. It's feel easier. And now you have this bandwidth and more energy to be healing the next phases in your life. Time doesn't stop. Chronological time, unfortunately, does not stop. There's the Kairos sense, the felt sense of time, and there's the Chronos, the chronological sense of time. Time is a resource you can never get back, and you can't make more of it. It is the most finite resource. The older you get, the more life experiences you're going to have. So when people are like, oh, therapy could last the rest of my life, do you plan on living the rest of your life and like going out and
if you're lucky, it will last.
Yeah, because you're going to be in new evolved versions of yourself year after year. The more you live and the more people who touch your lives and the more life experiences you have and the more roles you take on, right? You just start as self and child, sibling maybe, and then self, child, sibling, student, friend, colleague, sport team member, sports team member, employee, boss, that like you collect. It's like Pokemon Go. You collect all these roles as you get older, and then you have all this stuff to hold. Yeah, it's probably helpful to have a place to put them down sometimes and empower yourself to be like, oh, I haven't been the best sister. How can I help myself? Oh, because I've been a boss, I haven't been a present partner. Analyze those actual roles you have in your life and your self states from IFS. I would say both are valuable for empowerment.
Absolutely. Well, a saying I've always had is even a battleship needs a safe harbor, right? So like you could be the most equipped for war, whatever it might be. We do have to go into a safe harbor, and that can be therapy and that can be coaching, where you're like, you know what? I can go out and I can have a journey. And some of my clients, like, hey, we're going to discontinue. I feel good. No problem. They come back a year later, 18 months later, whatever it might be. And it's not like, oh God, I have to go back to therapy. It's like, well, no, let's debrief from your journey. What has it been like? Like, holy cow, you went 18 months without having a software update. What was that like? What did you experience? What has your experience led you on in sort of that journey of like, what else can I change in my own perspective? Or what do I need to change in my own perspectives? Like, I think people get locked up so much on like, wow, it's going to cost so much money to go to therapy. And whether it's therapy or coaching, I kind of laugh because there was an article that I read that like was really sad, which was the largest, what is the largest expense in a human's life outside of food and rent? Okay.
Should I guess?
Go for it.
Oh, I love answering questions. I just wasn't prepared. What is the largest expense out of a human aside from food?
From
Health?
rent. So you're on top of it. They were actually talking about how there's this really weird correlation right now that people will at the end of their life spend more on car insurance than on other aspects of their life. Like if you threw insurance in on top of it, sure, health insurance, car insurance, yes. But like if you actually think about it, it's the most consistent thing you've spent since 16 years old. It's like you have to have car insurance. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
when you add it up, and they were talking about some people living to certain periods in their life can have like $500,000 to $1 million in insurance payments. And you're telling me like, but then you'll tell me that therapy or coaching or self-improvement is too costly. Like, wait a second, you spend like a lot of your life paying for something that may never happen, like a car accident. Sure, some
That's the
of us
insurance
don't.
industry. Yeah.
And then you turn around and say, well, I can't actually pay for the thing that I know will actually bring definitive change in my own life. This is interesting. Let's have this conversation. And that's where sometimes we get stuck at like the beginning of a journey, like you're sort of at the trailhead of your life and go, ooh, this could be scary. I'd actually say it'd be scarier to sit and not know who I am, or it'd be scarier for me 5, 10 years down the road to then be wrestling with the voices in my head on why didn't I ever start my journey to self-improvement.
Yeah.
Like I something that's really come to me in my life is the realization of like I am the first male in my family that hasn't stuck with blue collar. Like
Mhm.
I made the transition. Now I was a mechanic. I I mean I've done the blue collar life. I did it for 15 years to put myself through school, but I recognize like, wait a second, when we look at the long term, like how do I keep and manifest my influence and be around for my family, driving a truck or doing the mechanics work wasn't going to be the thing for me. And the reason why I bring this up is because a lot of people sit there and go, well, my family does this and this was destructive or this was toxic. Why can't you replant your family tree? Like, because we do it all the time in real life. They walk up to a tree, they cut a branch, they go ahead and they plant it in something else and they create another tree. Sometimes you're going to have to take and be that branch that decides to move away. But it is your responsibility, and you cannot blame the rest of the tree for your inaction
Mhm.
to replant yourself somewhere into maybe something that's more prosperity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And therapy is, I think, a great fertilizer.
No, yes, it is.
And the therapist can be the best gardener possible, but we only tend to you every so often. It is your job to make sure that you're watering yourself, getting enough sunlight, getting enough oxygen, and
Mm-hmm.
help you weather those other elements. But we can't, just similar to parents, we cannot prevent everything that you don't want to have happen to not happen, and then everything you do want to have happen to have. Like we can't, we're not
Yeah.
soothsayers. We're not, we can't control
No,
time and space. That'd be cool.
the tree doesn't only grow when the arborist is around. Like,
Mhm.
and that's the big frustration in doing work is you can say, well, I sit down and we have amazing conversations and I really like my therapist, but man, I'm not feeling any difference in my life. Well, wait a second. What are we doing? And it is going to create work. You know, a big phrase that I constantly hear as a therapist and coach is, I don't know. I don't know how to do this. I don't get like,
And I'm
I
like,
don't,
what would knowing look like? Or
I,
you do know.
we always have those cliche things, right? Like,
No.
hmm,
Yeah.
uh, well, I've moved into actually going like, do you need to know right now? Do you absolutely need to have
Ooh.
the answer right now?
Yeah, I think about that too.
Like,
I ask that.
like,
So do you need to? Like, what would knowing do for you? That's what I'll ask.
just imagine the pilgrims on the boat sitting in Spain, right? And they're like, oh no.
Yeah.
Like, guess what? They didn't have the luxury of knowing. It was like, well, we're gonna go ahead and sail west till we hit something.
Yeah.
Like, that's just what we're going to do. And when you find yourself in those positions again, you feel powerlessness. What's the next best thing you can do? Sitting and staying where you are is not going to bring you any growth, but being actionable will. I'm literally asking for baby steps. Just do something
One
that's
step.
not detrimental or maladaptive.
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
Wow, they made me feel frustrated. Now I could go ahead and hit like the BK Lounge on my way home and order my double Whopper with cheese, or I've been saying I've been wanting to go to the gym.
Yeah.
Or you know what? I want to listen to that one podcast. I could sit in my own misery and attack the chunky monkey, or I could listen to that podcast and go for a walk.
Yeah.
Like, and people say, well, you make it sound so easy. I don't want to discredit the work that you're going to do, but I will guarantee you this, it will be easier than what you have imagined.
Yeah.
Because you think it's some Herculean task. You think that it's a light switch. You think it's something you have to find in the center of you. There's all these other things that we've been told we need, right? Like, it kills me because we can get on an even longer conversation of like, oh, it's a pill I need. It's a subscription I need. It's, if I had that Snuggie, like trust me, it's not something that you have to buy. It's something that you have to cultivate.
And find.
And it's going to require you digging within. It's going to require at times standing there and being messy. Like, oh, I don't feel well put together. Well, the perfect day is not going to happen for you to feel like then that's the day I'll have the power to change things.
Exactly.
Some of the greatest things that have ever happened in the human history of life happened on days it shouldn't have. But people showed up.
Yeah. Yeah. And to continue to show up, yes, it can be daunting. And yes, it can be exhausting. It's worthwhile. You are, and this is where it ties in. If you don't believe that you are worth it, you won't start the journey. What's the point? Why would I? Who's going to care? Who's going to notice? Will it make a difference? We get so caught up in the more developed human mind than even a few centuries ago of that we get the paralysis of too much thought. And if you are raised in a hypercritical household, it's not uncommon to think, well, what could go wrong? Imagine how powerful the shift is to empower yourself of, I'm going to challenge this and ask what could go right? What could go well out of this scenario? And if you truly can't identify anything, then don't do the thing. Like you can indirectly and empower in an empowered way, figure out that something is not the right fit for you by asking and analyzing from a positive lens. Okay, what could go well? What are 3 things that I'm hoping for out of this experience? What are 3 neutral things that are factual I think could happen? And then not so much that I'd want it to happen, but I would like to be prepared for it. How could I see this maybe not going the way I want it to is even a more empowered, productive conversation and question than what could go wrong? You can manifest anything going wrong. And I'm not talking necessarily like woo-woo manifest. What you focus on grows.
Oh, so yeah. It's object fixation.
Exactly.
I don't want to crash into that. And then bam, how the hell did I get here? Well, if it's the only thing you're staring at, that's the direction you're going to go.
Don't think about a yellow car. Boom.
Yeah.
Your subconscious mind can't process no or don't, which is also going back to parenting. So many parents parent out of injunctions and not permissions. Injunctions are no, stop, don't. And permissions are yes, please, continue, essentially. And we talk to our inner selves and our adult selves on a day-to-day basis like that. If you were parented off of, I teach about this a lot. If you were parented primarily off of injunctions, you will have more of a harshly developed superego, i.e. inner critic. If you were parented off of permissions, you will likely have an inner cheerleader, a positive superego who modulates and regulates you with love, not with demeaning force.
Yeah. And what Talia is saying there is that when the child still reaches for the hot pan, you're not like, yes, please. Like,
yes, please continue. You can
no.
Those are the exceptions. If it's
no.
Grab the hand and say no.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's obviously allowed. Yeah.
But that was a great reframe there of realizing how often we say injunctions to ourselves, to others, to our family when you didn't need to. Right? Like no is such an abrupt and harsh, like bam, shut down, end. It might as well be a period in the conversation because there's nothing that can really continue after no comes out. And again, going back to, okay, how do I keep that? How do I keep from losing my power? How do I make power happen when I feel powerless? it is going to be also realizing at certain times when like the no's come out, when the harsh conversation comes out, that you don't have to weather every storm anymore. Like be your own savior, be your own search and rescue.
Yeah.
Like give yourself permission to continue in something else. It goes back to, again, somewhat of, I think it's more of like in Western culture, because there's this like vicious thing on like being polite, and being polite means that I have to sacrifice my own emotional state. And it's being able to sit back and go like, well, I can still be nice to you, and I don't have to be in your presence. And I don't have to allow myself to be run over by the forklift of your emotions.
In fact, it
Just
allows
so
me
I,
to continue to be nice to you if I don't see you.
absolutely.
Yeah, the less interaction, the more I can maintain tolerance and respect for you. Yeah. Yeah, it's I think we covered so much today, honestly. I'm so happy that we dove into this, and we don't script these, by the way. If you've listened,
Not at all.
haven't quit on us, we just go in with a topic and free flow, and this is really the backstage access to our minds. I love it.
Absolutely. And what's funny is this whole conversation was done because this is how therapists relax. Like I was trying, like I was actually explaining to someone, there was like, so you're doing a podcast for like over an hour, like you just talk about it. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, you like this? like,
You're like, no, I love it. They're like, oh,
yep.
yeah, it's the best. I love
So-
podcasts. I love the sound of my own voice, obviously, and it gives good clips for the gram. So yeah.
Yeah. Doing it for the gram.
Yeah, if you guys have topics that you want us to cover
Please
or
shoot
more
it out
questions
there.
about any of our episodes, you can DM either one of us. I'm on Instagram mainly at Talia Bombola. Adam, where can people find you?
I'm at Wild Ethos Counseling on Instagram. Short and
Also,
sweet.
our email is ask@between2 spelled out clinicians.com. So ask@between2clinicians.com.
Awesome.
Happy to answer any of your questions and let us know what you liked about it. And if you like this, please share, like, comment, subscribe, all of the pitchy things at the end, but we want more people to listen to these episodes. So we would greatly appreciate it if this made a big impact on you, to share it with somebody that you care about.
Absolutely. I wish you the best in the new year. I hope that maybe this has helped you guys in being able to find your power.
Until next time.
Next time.